There's a commonly held belief and assumption about special abilities that's just plain wrong. And actually, it's not just wrong, it could lead you into a dark place if you don't know what to look for. I've noticed that most people believe that someone who has special abilities is also spiritually awake. But that's definitely not the case. Many people have non-ordinary abilities or have special gifts, but are not spiritually awake. And here's where the weirdness starts. Because of their gifts, often others start to give their power away to them, which can be a dangerous thing, especially if the person with the gifts is not acting in integrity or is downright predatory. In this episode, we're breaking some myths about gurus, special abilities, and awakening, and we'll talk about what to look out for so you're not being bamboozled by an unscrupulous guru or getting sucked into some weird cult. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part. The group frequency calibration associated with this episode is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. If you like this episode, please help us out by hitting the like button and sharing this episode with a friend. It helps us get our content to more people like you. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're talking about gurus, special gifts, and awakening.
There's a belief that I have experienced in a certain part of my life at a certain time that gurus are awakened and gifted. All of them.
Oh, okay.
And that we should subserve ourselves to them. And curiously through life, I've noticed that there's people who are gifted and extremely gifted.
Yeah.
But complete
Yeah.
It has to be said, right?
Totally.
And I've met gurus, they're being worshipped.
Yeah.
And they're little shysters too.
Yeah.
You know, groping women and,
Yeah.
you know, I've heard loads of stories of that and luckily I have never experienced it. But I would love to just break this myth.
Yeah.
That every guru is awakened and gifted, or that every gifted person is awakened and should be a guru. You know, that kind of combination.
Yeah.
And then I'd also, the biggest question is, and I promise I'm not going to swear, but I really want it. Why are these gifted, why are they gifted if they're not awakened? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a thing. You had to be awakened to have the gifts.
Yeah.
But they have these gifts and they are not awakened.
Yes,
You
I
know?
agree with that.
So can you talk to that?
Yeah. So, like you said, many people confuse those two things.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you say guru, to me, it's not just the Indian tradition, right? It's any sort of spiritual teacher type person. Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what religious context it is in, I think is what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will mistake that if you're in this elevated position, which everyone bows down to because they think that this person is elevated in some way,
Yeah.
that they are actually awake.
Yeah.
So to me, there's a distinction between actual awakening, the group of people who surrounds that person who claims that they're awake and wants them to save the group of people,
Yeah.
and then gifts themselves. And so when we say gifts, we don't mean like a package that you wrap up and you bring to someone's house for dinner. We mean the gifts you're talking about are different abilities to do certain things that are what we call non-ordinary.
Yeah, that appear non-human.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And also to come back to the idea that some spiritual teacher or in particular a guru is awakened because of some lineage and some path
Yes.
that they took.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody just believes it and therefore claims him to be it.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, I'd like to add to the mix of our discussion is that if you're awake, that you can't fall in the sense that you can't drop your resonance. So there are certain people who have gained the awakened state, but because they don't deal with their ego mind stuff, they get pulled down in the resonance and they're no longer in that awakened state because they're meant to clean up more stuff so they can bounce back up into that awakened state.
Yeah.
And so there's this idea that once you're awakened, that you're permanently awakened. It's
Yeah.
just like there you are, permanently awakened, and you can't drop in your resonance. But the thing is, awakening isn't an end point. It's the beginning of the infinite. And in order to stay in that state of awakening, your resonance needs to stay at a certain level or rise.
Yeah.
That's the point. And so the thing about humans is that we have something called the ego mind. And it will constantly bite you in the ass if you're not looking at it.
Yeah.
And it can pull your resonance down. So I just like to bring that into the mix too.
Yeah, because there's such a lot in there. Because I have met people, I mean, I think we may have spoken about this in previous podcasts, where they actually do start off being incredible human beings.
Yeah.
And they help a lot of human beings. And then suddenly something happens. And I think if a person doesn't stay awake and listen and stay empowered as well and know that their own authority and their own boundaries, they miss it.
Yeah.
And you watch this person start off as like a real crusader, in the sense of really there to help their rising of consciousness and or humanity. And then you watch this side of them that's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't match what you say you're doing here.
Yes.
Hang on a minute now.
Yeah.
And something's not congruent here.
Yeah. So I think to go back to your question, one of your original 3, how is it that people can have gifts, or non-ordinary gifts, and can do certain things, be it healing or catalyze awakening or shift certain things in the physical realm? Why do they have those gifts?
Especially when they're not awakened.
When they're not awakened.
Yeah.
Okay. So the assumption in that is that the gifts are present or available to you only if you're awakened. They can be actually given in a number of different ways.
Oh, okay. No, that upsets me. Like, why are these gifts being given to these?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm saying it again, but
it's true. So sometimes what will happen is that you have people who are incarnating again, and they had gifts in previous lifetimes.
Right.
Okay? So they're living out those gifts in this lifetime. But the question is, how did they get those gifts?
Yeah.
So sometimes what will happen is that there's a negotiation with the darkness for those gifts. Okay? Where it's like, hey, I'd love to have a superpower. I'd really like to be able to heal with touch. I'd really like to be able to have people experience X, Y, and Z. I'd like to be able to, I don't know, whatever the thing is that they want. And the darkness is wily and powerful, okay? And oftentimes very aware of our human weakness to feel special and to be loved and to be adored and to be great in some way.
Yeah.
And so sometimes gifts are given in exchange for a piece of the soul or a piece of you as infinite indestructible consciousness.
So it's like you're trading, so that phrase, you're trading your soul for it?
Yeah, you trade your soul for it. So you can get, people bargain for different things. They can either bargain for special abilities. They could bargain for fame.
Yeah.
They could bargain for, wealth, whatever.
Yeah.
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 So that's one way that you can get gifts that is not from an awake state. Now, some people, when they awaken, they do have gifts.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is totally a way that people can have gifting. Okay. You can also have gifts from past lifetimes that are not associated with the darkness at all.
Yeah.
You just had a higher resonance in certain lifetimes, and you have awakened, and there are gifts from those lifetimes, and you have reincarnated to help others. So you have gifts from those lifetimes.
Yeah.
The other way that people have gifts is they are tapping into future timelines. So if you take Tesla, for example, right? Very brilliant, at least 100 plus years ahead of his time in terms of what it is that he was experimenting with, that he knew in terms of free energy and all this sort of stuff that he was talking about. He was a genius, yes, but he was also tapping into a future timeline.
Yeah.
So he was able to access the technology and the information from that timeline like way before anyone else was.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's that possibility. The other possibility as well is that the person is simply very highly resonating. So meaning they are in that awakened state and they do understand that this is an illusion and that they can work at a much higher level of vibration.
Okay.
That is possible. And then the last thing is, for some beings who are newly incarnating, they come from a higher dimensional place, like a higher dimensional resonance or consciousness level. And when they come into embodiment, they're here to help humanity rise at this time. And so they have a special gift, meaning a unique ability to help humanity at this time. And the condition of them being here and forgetting a lot of who they really are is to have this gift. So those are some of the ways that you can have unique abilities. Do you want to actually begin to clear the distortion patterns we're talking about? Then click on the link in the description below to get the free group frequency calibration meditation specific to this episode. That's where the change actually happens.
First of all, I'd love to know how we as individuals can recognize when a gift is coming from somebody that has sold their soul, shall we say, as opposed to somebody that is just innately resonating at a higher frequency resonance.
Yeah.
You
can tell?
How do we recognize?
You can tell by how they act and how they behave and what what their life looks like. So anyone can say things that are really pretty and beautiful and awake, and that's awesome. But how are they in their life? So are they sexually inappropriate with whatever gender?
Yes.
Right? Because it's not just women, right? It's boys too.
Yeah.
So do they take advantage of their position of power to gain things?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about working for things. Because, a lot of people think for some reason that if you're spiritually advanced and if you are here to help humanity, that you shouldn't make money.
Yeah, you should do it for free.
You should do it and sacrifice yourself. Yeah,
Mm.
but that's not true. That's actually a very low resonating idea.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you are doing something in order to gain power, in order to gain money, do you understand what I'm saying? Like you're manipulating things on the physical in order to have that happen. That's not so great.
And it's more like power over
Someone else.
somebody else rather than being empowered.
Exactly.
Right.
So you're trying to diminish someone else or put someone into fear so they give you money, for example.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be an example of that. Also, are they in integrity or are they not? So in the sense that, do they say they're going to do a bunch of stuff and then don't actually do it?
Yeah.
Or are they in integrity and actually hold the resonance of who they claim to be through all of them, meaning through their actions, through their words, how they are in the world? Now, I'm not suggesting by any stretch that people who are in an awakened state are perfect humans, because there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Okay, humans are inherently flawed. But if somebody makes a mistake, which is inevitable, that they take ownership and apologize for it, right? Or they don't try to hide it and sweep it under the rug or whatever it is, take accountability. So it's the thing is, if you truly are awake, it's easy to take accountability in the sense of like, if, someone has done something wrong, because in the grand scheme of things, you want to keep your resonance high.
Yeah.
Right? And being out of integrity drops your resonance.
Yeah.
So if you're not in integrity, then it's really harming yourself. In a way. So the thing is, if somebody has a lot of chaos, a lot of drama, a lot of lack of integrity, a lot of slippery things that are done and hiding from people or, that kind of thing, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. Okay. Right. They're good everyday signs. Now, the next question I was going to ask you related to this as well. Can those people, can they become aware and change that for themselves?
Yeah.
As in, they realize that maybe because sometimes they don't realize they did it, sometimes they did, I don't know.
Yeah.
They realize that this gift came from a time where they sold a part of their soul, and now they realize they don't want to do that now.
Yeah.
And they want to come into integrity. Can they change it?
Yeah, they can. But the interesting thing, I think, for people to watch for is when people claim that they are perfect and they don't have any kind of distortion and they're above everyone and everything else. That to me is like a huge freaking red flag.
Yeah.
Because I don't care how elevated you are still in a human body and you still have human emotion and you still have an ego mind and you still have stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember this interview that I had read in a magazine where this fellow was clearly in awe of the Dalai Lama and probably had been following his work for a while. And so he was with the Dalai Lama in a car on a very mountainous road somewhere in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
And the car was on this very narrow road. And so there was a point there where it was a little scary, like one of the wheels slipped or something like this. And the interviewer noticed that the Dalai Lama grabbed the handle of the car, the window handle. And he looked at the Dalai Lama and he said, how come you're afraid? And the Dalai Lama looked at him and he said, well, I experience fear. And the man said, well, but you're the Dalai Lama. I didn't think that you had fear. And he's like, and then the Dalai Lama laughed. And he said, of course I experience fear. I'm human. And I thought that was such a beautiful answer because he is human. Like, he acknowledges his humanity. Yeah. So the thing is, if anyone says that they have nothing to clear, that they're beyond all distortion, that, you know what I mean? Like that kind of messaging, or there's no one who's better than them, you have to kind of ask yourself, is this person really awake? Because if you're really, truly awake, you don't need to be better than anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You recognize the glory in everything. And the sacredness of everything. So it's kind of a weird position to take if you claim that you're awake.
Yeah, especially if you have to tell everybody. Okay. Yeah. Because ultimately, when you talk about the awakened state, it's about surrendering, right? And letting go of that ego.
Yes.
I mean, you had your own experience with that.
Yeah.
In the 9-hour meditation that was supposed to only be like 40-minute meditation.
Exactly.
That letting go when it dissolves and you surrender into that state of or you leave behind the unforgetting and you move into the state of remembering.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're in a constant state of learning and growing and rising in your resonance. At least that's been my experience of things. You know, it's not like, I think that we get to have this experience in our humanness where we have the opportunity to continuously grow. And I feel like it is an ego mind thing to think that you have accomplished all that. You know what I mean? I just feel like awakening is infinite. So there's no like point where you cap out and you're like, I know everything.
Yeah, because it's not binary, right?
No.
I mean, even if by looking back on our life, you know, a time where, if you think back to a time where you had a little bit of drama or chaos or an altercation with somebody. Yeah. And you handled it the way you handled it. And you looked at it at that time and thought, I could have done it differently. And then fast forward 10 years and you look back again, you're like, oh, I would have done that a lot more different. You know, I'm not that person. Yeah. So even then, just even in our lives as we move through it, we change.
Absolutely.
Without even thinking about it, really.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine being awakened is any different. I mean, they have all these proverbs, the Zen proverbs, right? Before awakening, clean the dishes, clean the toilet, scrub the floors. After awakening, clean the dishes, scrub the toilet, clean the floors.
Yeah, it's the same.
It's the same life, except your experience or interaction with it is what's different.
Exactly. And you get to recognize and be aware of your own brilliance and the brilliance of life. And then you have a human moment and you have a challenge, which is meant to make you grow. That's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing about the human experience, as intense and as difficult and as challenging as it can be, is it's there to help you to transcend, to recognize more and more your own brilliance.
So, I mean, I'd love to bring it back to why we're even talking about this at this time, because it seems pivotal and critical, because we have reached a point, and I think a lot of people are starting to recognize that we are somehow reaching this climax of something. We might not know what it is. Yeah. But we are all kind of feeling the intensity. Even my teenagers are talking about it. Yeah. You know. And they'll talk about, whoa, it's a hard day today, or it's been a rough week this week. I'm like, really? Yeah. You know, it's not just me or my husband. But we seem to be in a moment of time where it's critical to understand truly what awakening is. Yeah. And not to give up your power to somebody who claims to be spiritually awake, and to understand that when you move into a relationship with somebody that does have a gift, that it's not about surrendering to that person with a gift. It's about, okay, how can you help me to become higher in resonance? Yeah. And I kind of feel like that kind of needs to be talked about a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Because as you said, it is a time where consciousness is rising. Now, you might look out in the world, you might think, well, gee, it seems like things are getting worse. Yeah. It doesn't seem like things are getting better. Yeah. And that's the point. The point of the polarity is to shake you awake, right? For people just to be like, enough. Like, I don't want to participate in the world in this way. Something has to change. And the one thing I can control is me. And the thing is, it's true. You can control you. And the wonderful thing is, at this time when consciousness is rising, we've been given the opportunity to really awaken, to shake ourselves out of this sleep that we are disconnected, that the only thing that exists is the physical, that we are fundamentally separate from and less than the divine. To recognize that inherently that divineness is within you, it animates you, and to remember who we truly are. So the thing is, I've seen this over and over and over again in my own spiritual journey, which has been like 25 plus years. It's as soon as you have somebody who's like the teacher or who has the healing abilities or whatever the thing is, invariably there's a collective of people who bows down to that person as if they are less than.
Yes.
But the thing is, you're not less than. You're simply at a place where you have not yet remembered, but it doesn't make you less than. It just means that you have not yet remembered, you know? And so the thing is, we are really shifting in this time to take back our power, to be like, you know, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that, but if I want to, awakening is available to me. I just have to have the tools to help me rise in my frequency resonance, to release these distortion patterns and move up, and to not give away this authority that I have to someone else. Because so often people will give away their authority to the other person. Like everything that person says has to be 100% true, even if they themselves intuitively feel otherwise. So the thing is to like, okay, you may not know everything yet, and you may not know everything ever. But you know what resonates as true for you. So stay true to that, right? So even if someone says something that's counter to you, I'm not saying you necessarily need to chuck the whole baby out with the bathwater and be like, now they suck, but it's just examine.
Yeah.
Is this true for me? Do I want to take this in? And also what I've seen over and over again in spiritual movements, I guess, or different spiritual groups, is if the teacher person or person with the abilities starts to act out of integrity, the people who follow will excuse it.
Yep. They'll justify
it. Like, oh, well, the way he conducts himself sexually really has nothing to do with anything, right? Because they're afraid, the followers are afraid that they're going to lose that awakening that person is promising them, right? If they say something.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've actually been in circles like that where they've actually turned on the person that's recognized something's out of integrity here and said that actually you have the problem with this sex. You're being judgy, and it becomes them.
Yes.
They're the problem.
The person who speaks out, you mean?
Yeah, the person that speaks out. You're the problem. You've got problems with sex. You're just being overly judgy. You've gone into your ego. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And if you're a person that does do the inner work, you're going to take that on and go, oh, okay, maybe it is me. Oh, wait, okay. You know? And unless you can come to peace with it, you're just going to keep on, like, okay, questioning, is it me? Is it me?
Yeah.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Until you get to that point where you go, no, actually, no, sorry. Okay, you guys might be happy with this. This might be all right for you, but it's not for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what you say, come back to your point.
Yeah.
Is this true for me?
Yes. And the thing is, you know, it's funny. We can become very attached to our teachers and our guides.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we kind of love them. We attach to them. So, and then we deify them. It's kind of a weird thing that happens. So whoever your teacher is, they are human. Okay? They are going to be human. How they act as human is an important indication of how they are in terms of their own resonance. And to know that they will fall down. So, you know what I mean? Like when we deify our teachers and our guides, it's like they're not allowed to be human anymore.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I mean, if they're awakened, they can hold their space with that. But it's not really fair, really, of the followers to like impose that on someone.
Yeah.
You know? And the other thing too is, you know, when we attach to our teachers, sometimes we don't recognize that with this teacher, there's an abuse of power that's happening. I've seen that happen too.
Yeah.
Where people who are in a position of like healing will start to, you know, suggest things to people or say certain things that, or ways of behaving that are out of integrity for the person. Or that takes away their free will in some way. You know, it says like, this is the way it should be for you because it's going to give you X, Y, and Z. And that is not cool. You know what I mean? It's if the person is truly awake, they don't need to make you do something.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't.
I've never understood that. We have friends that they're married because the teacher that they followed at the time told them they should be married.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm sure he dressed up with some magical words to impress upon them that it's really important that they get married. But when I heard the story, I was like, oh, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's like, you know what that's similar to? It's like people who are like heads of cults and stuff like that will say like, oh, if you have sex with me, then you will gain this in terms of like spiritual advancement or awakening or, you know, blessings from God or however they dress it up. It's about the same abuse of power, really. So I feel like it's really important to watch yourself and say to yourself, okay, is what they're saying really resonating with me?
Yeah.
Can I hold my authority here? Is this true for me?
Yeah.
And if it's time for me to pivot from this person who I've gained a lot from, I'm not saying you haven't learned something from this person. I've had many teachers myself that I've learned a lot from. Great, fantastic. To acknowledge the humanness and be like, and now I'm done. I'm done. I've learned what I've learned from this person. It's been this beautiful exchange. And now I'm moving somewhere else to learn something else.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to watch is if that happens and if the teacher healer person gets upset and tries to keep you in their fold, that is another indication that they're not
sign.
awake because they shouldn't feel that way. I mean, not shouldn't in the sense of like they are bad. But if you're awake, then you celebrate the rise in vibration and that person is now going to explore something else in their journey with someone else. It's not personal to you.
Yeah.
You know? And so the funny thing is when people reveal that and they try to keep people in the fold for whatever reason, that's like a huge red flag.
Yeah. Okay, I promise my last question.
Okay.
I also want to ask, when you awaken, do you automatically get a gift?
Yeah, it's funny. So many people believe this. No, you don't.
There's a lot of people think that's the whole goal to awakening.
Yeah.
That you awaken because then you get your gifts.
Yeah.
So wait.
No.
Huh?
No. There is that weird thing where people do believe that when they awaken, they're going to get a gift. That's not how it works. So when the gift is the awakening.
Yes. Yes.
Let me just make that really clear. Your gift is the awakened state where you get to start to recognize the brilliance of yourself, the brilliance of life, the magnificence of life, the glory of who you are, what it is you get to co-create in this humanness. That's the gift.
Yeah.
That's the awakened state. And it has to do with your frequency resonance. So if you're trying to seek awakening to receive a gift, you really need to look at the distortion patterns that are driving that, from non-worthiness and non-deserving and all this stuff that you need in terms of being adored and feeling like you have something to contribute. Because I think a lot of people feel like if they have a gift, then somehow they are more worthy. You're not more worthy if you have a gift.
I was going to ask you what is underpinning that, because I do hear a lot of people say, I just wish I could get my gifts. I wish my gifts could come in. Words to that effect.
Yeah.
I hope that my gifts start to come in. I need to go deeper in to find out what my gifts are. Like, wow.
Yes. And the funny thing is, your gift, everyone assumes it's an ability that's like a healing ability or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But your gift of who you are is not in the ability. There are people who their gift is to be so sparkly and bright, and there's a huge bundle of energy, and they're lots of fun. So their gift is play, right? Which allows people to come into the present moment of time, to be really in this space of joyfulness and freedom.
Yeah.
That's a gift. But people don't think of that as a gift. They just think that person's being silly, right? Or they like having them at parties or whatnot, right? Or your gift could be like, you are so present that other people come right into the present moment with you. Tremendous gift. Tremendous. For other people, it's generosity of spirit, kindness.
Yeah.
Kindness is a gift, you know? And I don't mean it in like a self-sacrificial way, like I have to be kind to others because I'm not worthy and this is what I'm supposed to do. Like kindness just like seeps from their pores, and people just want to be around them because it's so loving and it's so delightful to be around them.
Oh, I worked with a woman where she said, kindness is also being able to tell somebody the truth that they may need to hear, not want to hear, but may need to hear.
Yes.
And that is an act of kindness.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't do it, they stay there. They don't understand why the situations stay in the same way.
Yeah.
Until you come along and say, hey, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And some people, their gift is to disrupt. So they, like, despite all of their efforts, will show where there's darkness. People around who seem to be all glowy and good, and then it turns out they're not so glowy and good. somehow just in their presence, it becomes revealed that the person's not that great. So do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like your gift is some special ability.
Yes.
Right? And so the thing is, with our gifts, we're often blind to them. Mm-hmm. We don't recognize their gift. We just think that that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know? It's just, of course, it's effortless. Doesn't everyone do this? No, they don't. It's your gift, you know?
Yeah.
So,
all right. Okay, good. Thanks for answering that, because I was like, is this a given? I mean, just being in a state of understanding who you truly are at your essence. I hate that word, but who you truly are.
Yeah.
Why you're animated.
Yeah.
Why you're given life force by a creator.
Yeah.
To understand that, whoa,
yeah.
That's a whole other world you're living after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing about the awakening process. It's just this infinite experience that you get to have of higher and higher resonance. And, the gift thing is really something from the human ego mind because we want to feel special. We want to feel like we have a purpose. We want to feel like we matter.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you, the gift isn't what makes you matter at all. The fact that you are who you are, and if you're someone who rises in your frequency resonance, you get to share that with others, that's awesome in itself. To learn more about what spiritual awakening really is and the most efficient way to get there, check out my next video. I'll see you inside.